Morning everybody, a bit later today. Yesterday we read about the attack of the Gorm on Munbury Warren, and we know that Podkin, Paz and Pook escaped. So chapter 3 is called Starclaw, and hopefully we'll find out what happened to them. I don't need to go into detail about that awful flight out of the dark tunnel, about how the three of them sobbed and wailed their way to the surface and out into the snowy woods, or about how they ran through the rest of that dark, blizzard-choked night, terrified that every shadow hid an enemy, that every second could be their last on this miserable earth. You don't need to know how many times they thought about going back, or trying somehow to save their mother or their aunt or their friends, or how often each one of them stumbled to the ground, overcome with grief, until the other one pulled them up and onwards again. That terrible night can only really be remembered by those two poor little rabbits. Pook was thankfully too young to know what was going on, beyond being cold, hungry and away from his mother. And neither of them will ever speak of it again, not even to each other. All you need to know is that as the sky began to lighten in the east, the young rabbit staggered into a clearing and finally rested against the trunk of an old frost-covered oak. "Where do you think we are?" stammered Podkin. Are we anywhere near Redwater?" "How am I supposed to know?" said Paz. Pook was nestled inside her tunic, the only one of them feeling slightly warm. "I was lost 5 minutes after we came out of the tunnel. Maybe if you'd paid attention in your geography lessons." "You were paying attention for me, and you don't know where we are either, so the lessons were a fat waste of both of our time." Neither of them spoke for several minutes. They knew how serious it was to be lost in the woods in this weather. The cold was deadly, and there were hungry wolves and bears around, not to mention the Gorm. "I think we should," began Paz, but she was interrupted by an explosion of fluttering ahead. A large bird flapped its way up through the falling snow and away over the trees. "Just a crow," she said, relieved. "I thought it might be, you know." "Not just a crow," whispered Podkin. "It was one of them. Didn't you see? It had metal spikes bursting through its skin, and its eyes were like theirs." "You're imagining things, Pod. After what happened, your mind isn't working properly." "It is. I saw it." "A crow? How can a crow be like them?" "Don't you remember Father saying?" Podkin was crying again now, big fat tears that splashed down to melt holes in the snow. "They change things. Things like crows and rats. They turn them into their servants. That crow spotted us, and it'll tell them where we are." Paz still wasn't convinced, but they had to keep moving, hoping all the time that they would see something to give them a clue as to where they were, if only everything wasn't covered in so much cursed snow. Paz shifted the sleeping lump inside her tunic that was Pook, and started to move off again, only to notice Podkin wasn't following. He had his nose stuck in the cloth-wrapped bundle that Auntie Olwen had given him. "Come on, Podkin, we have to get moving!" But Podkin wasn't budging. "Wait a minute, Paz, there's something here." Podkin hadn't paid much attention to the dagger all night. In fact, he had been using it as a walking stick to help pull himself through the snow, and had half forgotten he had it at all. But now that there was some dawnlight, he was curious as to why it was so special, and a quick peek had revealed a piece of parchment wrapped around the blade. He pulled it out. "It's a message." He handed it to Paz. "Here, you look. I can't read Ogham." As I'm sure you will all know, Ogham is an ancient written language and was designed for the simple marking of posts, trees and standing stones. Podkin had always been too lazy to learn it, much like everything else, although now he was sorely regretting it. Paz stared at the parchment for a few seconds, her breath steaming around her head in a cloud as she gasped. "It's a letter from Mother!" "My darlings, if you are reading this, then our worst nightmares have come true, and the Gorm have come to Munbury. Thank the goddess that you have escaped. This dagger you are holding is our Warren's greatest treasure, the magical dagger known as Starclaw. Your father lets everyone think that his silver broadsword is the magic weapon, but it has always been this simple copper knife. It is one of the 12 gifts given to the first tribes back at the start of time. It may not look special, but it has the power to cut through anything that is except iron. We know the Gorm are hunting the 12 gifts for some evil reason, so this dagger must be kept from them at all costs. That is now your job. Run fast, my darlings, and run far. Your father and I love you more than you will ever know. Mother." If Paz hadn't already cried out every last tear in her body, she would have started sobbing again. Instead, she stood, numb, both inside and out, staring at the copper dagger in Podkin's hands. All Podkin could think to say was, "What use is a magic dagger that doesn't cut iron against a load of iron-armoured warriors? What were you thinking of doing with it, genius? Storming back and chopping the gorm to bits? Podkin shrugged. "It's a magic weapon. We're not heroes of some story, we're just children." Podkin stared at the dagger again, a useless hunk of metal and so precious to the gorm that his father had to die for it. He was so upset and confused he felt like flinging it away in the snow. Only his mother's plea stopped him. Would he ever see her again? He tried to think of the last words she had said to him, the last time he hugged her, but he couldn't remember. It suddenly seemed so important, but his mind was frozen blank. "Run fast, my darlings, run far." That would have to do instead. He would keep hold of the dagger for her sake. He rolled it and the parchment back into the blanket and looked up at his sister. "Well, what shall we do then? We don't even know where we are. Redwater is northeast. The sun is rising in the east. We head that way." Podkin didn't feel as if he could go another step, let alone run all the way to Redwater. He was about to argue some more when he thought he heard a noise in the distant woods. The rabbits pricked their ears, listening for something in the heavy silence of the falling snow. In amongst the muffled forest sounds and Pook's wheezy little snores, they heard it again. A sound that made their blood run cold. Well, colder. It was already almost frozen. Somewhere far behind them, but growing louder very quickly, was the echoing wail of a strange horn. And behind that was another, quieter sound. The clanking, scraping of iron against iron. What's going to happen in chapter 4? We will have to wait to find out till tomorrow. Have a lovely day and I hope you enjoy some of the sunshine in your gardens. See you later. Bye.